insightful, provocative, honest to a fault. You better find your safe space. The Nick Johnson Show is about to begin.
So I'd like to welcome you to my very first YouTube video. My name is Nick Johnson. I'm 25. I'm from Milford, Connecticut, and I am a conservative in a blue state. And I'm actually a blue-collar guy in a blue state, which makes it a lot more difficult for me to do or say anything or get anything done. So that's a little introduction on me and my struggle in Connecticut. But if you know who I am or you've been following along at all, you could find me on Facebook.com/NickJohnsonCT. Also at my website, theconservativemill.org, which is essentially the blog and where everything goes through to. So, you know, if you're following me, you know I did my first debate coverage, and that was just a terrible debate. We could all agree on that. On both ends, whether you support Trump or whether you support Clinton, it doesn't make a difference. It was just a terrible debate. But the second one, I don't even know what else to say about that. You know, I mean, you guys know where I stand on the election. And, you know, I haven't bought into Trump, and I most definitely haven't bought into Hillary. And I can't. There's no way, there's no how that it's not going to happen. But in terms of the debate, relatively speaking, Trump, he had a strong debate performance. He nailed her on the issues that I was screaming at my TV at the first debate for him to just get her on, and he didn't pull through. He left a lot on the table during the first debate, but in this debate, he threw everything but the kitchen sink at her. He really gave it to her. But what bothers me about the debate, in any of these debates this far, besides actually the vice presidential debate, I think that was actually the best debate we've seen so far. But none of these debates have been about the issues. It's all been personal attacks. It's been nothing short of just a bloodbath between the two of them. And I mean, during the second one, they touched on a few things, right? They touched on the economy a little bit. They touched on the impact of the refugees on national security, and we all got to meet Ken Bone. I guess this guy has a whole song about him now. It's actually pretty entertaining. You got to check it out. The guy in the red sweater. I guess he's like the man now. But you know, it was terrible. Regardless, the debate, it was just, again, a bloodbath between the two of them. It was like watching reality TV. I mean, if you remember Sammy Sweetheart and Ronnie from the Jersey Shore, that was the feel that I really got from it. But like I said, relatively speaking, Trump had a strong performance. But you might be wondering relative to what? And I'm not necessarily saying Hillary. I'm not really comparing the two debate performances between them. What I'm talking about is it's relative to the current environment in politics right now, and in our country as well. It flows from politics into just the general culture of our country. But I mean, there's nothing substantive about these debates. There's nothing there about policy. I mean, you get a couple things, like I said, here and there, but it was them waging a personal vendetta against another. That was it. And I went to sleep Sunday night, and I thought Trump had won. I mean, a lot of people said Trump won. But I woke up Monday, and I realized that America lost. This is kind of embarrassing to say, but I'm willing to serve as a lesson for you at my own expense. I could live with that. But during the debate, when Trump was taking it to Hillary on her various levels of corruption, right, and her poor decision-making as far as it went with the email scandal, and then laid into her about the hypocrisy of her claiming to be a voice for women when she intentionally tried to silence her husband's accusers. And I bet that there's a good amount of people, especially millennials, that learned about that Sunday night. There's not a lot of people that really are focusing on any of that, besides people that are involved or take in information from right-wing media sources. So a lot of that is silenced throughout the mainstream media. So I wouldn't doubt, I mean, especially in those that are just coming to the age of being able to vote, a lot of them really don't know anything about Hillary or Bill Clinton or any of that. But regardless of that, right? At the debate, when Trump was taking it to her on those things, I genuinely felt happy. I'll admit that. But because it's true, that was a big part of it, and I mean that's kind of what helped me sleep at night. But I mean, she's 100% self-serving. She doesn't care about the American people. She doesn't care about her female constituents. What she cares about is being in power, right? She cares about her legacy, just like Obama, and taking it personally. If you don't vote for Hillary, about the legacy. It's all about the progressive movement. But Hillary is more focused on herself than her own movement. If she looked at herself now, it was able to see herself now, back then, she would have been slapping herself up right now. But she doesn't care about being the first president to act on behalf of women, the first female president to act on behalf of women. She cares about being the first female president. So there's a difference. So while I'm seeing all this, I'm watching the debate, and something felt wrong about it. And speaking of vendettas, it actually felt like I was watching the movie V for Vendetta. And I don't know if you remember that movie. I don't know, if you remember what that was about. But Hugo Weaving, he plays the character that's named V. And he's the guy in the mask, if that helps jog your memory. And he's this anti-establishment vigilante. And the movie takes place in a fascist-controlled United Kingdom. So it's this militant government where anyone with dissenting views or principles, they're discredited, they're defamed, and they're never to be heard from again. So V, he fights back, and he tries to start a revolution to get the British to rise up and fight against their overreaching government. So now, depending on where you stand in this election and where you stand politically overall, you can insert various names into V. So if you look at this like an equation, right, where you have V, which you can insert, whether for you it's Donald Trump or it's Hillary Clinton, Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, whoever it may be, you insert them into this whole equation, right? And what we're solving for is why. Why did we get here, and how did we get here, right? So you could come up with different things. And again, it's all relative, and everything seems to be relative these days, but it's all relative to what you think politically, right? So if you talk to a Democrat, you talk to somebody on the left wing, a liberal, whatever it may be, progressive, they'll tell you that it was the Wall Street and 2008 financial crisis and all these terrible things that have happened with the economy, and this is what led us there, and it was all because of Wall Street and the foul play that happened there, and that's it, and they end it there. And if you're right wing, if you're Republican, whatever it may be, you're going to blame it on Obama. I mean, let's be honest with each other. But I mean, regardless, the statistics are there, especially if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that they have a plethora of information about all this. But you can find everybody's different opinion, right, on what led us here. But the problem is that we're here. So you could point the finger. It doesn't really matter, right? We could do the same thing that we're seeing in the debate, but we need to come to a solution, right? So in the whole debate process, in the election, you have more than likely a Democrat versus a Republican, right? So they're going to duke it out based on their principles. But we have to remember that as Americans, we still have to live with one another. So at the end of the day, right, Hillary Clinton loses, Donald Trump loses, whoever may be, whoever's the winner, whoever's on top, because that's what they see it as. This is a game. This is just, it's a personal, achieving their own personal legacy, Trump included. But they're done. When one loses, they're gone, right? And then they'll be sitting in a few interviews with whoever else wants to take them on their show after they lose and talk about, what the other person's doing wrong and why they're going to do it. It's all the same. But we as the Americans, we have to live together, right? We have to go to work with one another. We have to go to school with one another. So this is unavoidable. So the problem that we have is that we have two of the most corrupt and unfit people, whatever you want to call one or the other, they are both not fit to be president, right? So we have this lesser of two evils election, which I don't really buy that. I don't really buy that you have to pick one or the other. I think that we trap ourselves into thinking that, and we try to justify why we're willing to waver on our principles, right? It's just, I think that's just the truth, and we run from that, but at the end of the day, we know who we are, and we know what's right and what's wrong. But we're at this point where we have these two terrible candidates, and it makes me wonder, how have we allowed ourselves to get here? You could tell me why, right, and give me various reasons why, but as human beings, as American citizens, after all the things that we've been through, I mean, even if you look at 9/11, that was one of the most terrible days in our country, but we came together. That was the biggest in my lifetime, the biggest moment that I can remember, where all Americans, no matter what, race, religion, didn't matter. We all came together and supported each other as Americans. So if any of you are as worked up as I am, and as into this election, and you say it means as much as it does, we need to look at that the same way as we look at 9/11. Now, I understand there's a difference, but what I'm getting at is that we need to be able to come together and support each other and really work this out and come to a solution. So we understand the problem, but my theory on problems, especially when you're going to discuss them with people, is always have a solution prepared, right? You don't just go and say, oh, here's my problem. What do you think? You always have to bring something to the table. And then from there, it gives you a starting point where you could work from. So what I would recommend, and this is one of my solutions, my proposition. So you could hate it, you could love it, we could work with it, you could give me something else. But maybe if we stop looking at these things as simple lesser of two evils, right? If we actually supported each other and supported our principles, we could actually find more viable options, because the millennial generation has the biggest impact right now. We are the biggest generation. We could achieve more now than anybody can. So why do we let ourselves fall into this? We fall into a part of the establishment, right? We fall into a part of what we're allowing, or trying to put one person as the savior and the one that's ramming against that establishment. But we have the capacity to change that altogether, right? So we don't have to choose these terrible candidates, right? We don't have to be left with this. We could really make a difference here. And, it's a tough argument. It's a tough argument to have with somebody when they say, well, if a vote for Clinton is a vote, they tell you your vote for one person isn't a vote for who you're voting for. They tell you that if you're voting for Gary Johnson, that your vote might as well just go to Clinton, whatever the situation may be. That's not true. It's not true at all. Your vote is your vote. You're entitled to that vote. That's your right. So you don't need to sacrifice it because somebody else is saying this is where we need to go. This is the only solution. Now, I know no matter who you are, you see detrimental outcomes from either one of these candidates. And I think that there's truth on both sides of the table and on both sides of the aisle. That no matter what, either one of them are not going to be good. So we could prepare for that. But what are we going to do after? And what are we going to do in the wake of it? So if we end up choosing to fall into this lesser of two evils, because that's by choice, right? We can avoid that, and we could do something. We can make a bigger change. We could get even if you wanted to vote for Gary Johnson, we could all vote for Gary Johnson. There's a potential to make a difference here. But we could either choose to not do that, but at the very least, when we become the victims of our own decision, we need to be able to come together and figure it out. Because we can't do like these candidates are doing. We can't just trash one another and beat each other down for our beliefs and try to silence somebody because they aren't saying what you agree with. or what you believe, right? So we can't have that. That will never work. That will never be a part of our lifestyle because we're free, and we have to act as such, and we have to fight for that. So we can't let this go, right? We can't just let this slip out of our hands willingly. And if we do, there's nobody to blame but us. So you could blame the candidate, which is true. Ultimately, the candidate's responsible for their winning the election. My vote for Gary Johnson or for Jill Stein or for Hillary Clinton or for Donald Trump doesn't take away a vote from somebody else. They just didn't earn my vote. It's as simple as that. You don't have to give your vote away. You know, it's not. You can't stay home. I mean, you shouldn't stay home. You can, but you shouldn't. But no one is entitled to your vote by default just because you don't like the other candidate. So if nothing else, let's fight for that, right? Because if we allow ourselves to sacrifice our vote within the corrupt system, within the corrupt establishment that already exists, we're becoming a part of that corrupt establishment. So as much as we say we fight against it, we're playing into that hand. But if your person's Trump, if your person's Hillary, you're gonna go vote for them. You're right. Those are your principles. I can't try to tell you to change your principles. I would never do that. But when push comes to shove, when it's all said and done, and we have our president-elect on November 8th, we're going to have to come together as Americans, whether we like the outcome or not. And I'll be here. But in the meantime, check out these websites, theconservativemill.org, facebook.com/NickJohnsonCT, YouTube, The Nick Johnson Show, and soundcloud.com/Nick Johnson Show. Thank you to my lovely girlfriend for making a nice little list up there. See you later.